Okay, so we're doing this because there's a lot of interest in what's been happening with the art project here in my hometown, Mountainhome. But with all of this going on, I got ahead of myself. So yes, this Greening Mountainhome rain barrel project. These are all the barrels right now that are distributed through Mountainhome, Pennsylvania, and with a specific focus on the Mill Creek watershed. The Mill Creek is a really special place. And so what we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about the benefits, the reasons for having a rain barrel and the benefits of having a rain barrel, the components of what you're going to need for a rain barrel if you're interested in making one yourself. I'm also going to talk at that point about some websites. There are some excellent websites out there by Recreate the Wheel. And we're going to talk about painting your rain barrel because a lot of people are very interested in that. So we'll go through what you need to do to paint your rain barrel, how to install it properly, and then what the maintenance requirements are of having a rain barrel. So this is the Broadhead Watershed. For all of you that are local and not dialing in today from Florida, this is from one of my favorite vantage points up at Mount Wismer, an open space property on the Monroe Pike County border, up on the top of the Pocono Plateau. And from this spot, you can see the entire breadth of the Broadhead Watershed. All the way out to, in the distance here, the Delaware Water Gap. The Broadhead Watershed is 239 square miles, and that's what a watershed is. A watershed is all of the geographic area where the precipitation that falls is going to drain to one specific body of water. And so they're usually named for the creeks that flow through them. And of course, it's going to include all of the incredible tributaries that flow into the main stem of the Broadhead Creek. But from where I'm standing at this point, taking the picture, I'm right at the headwaters of the middle branch of the Broadhead Creek. Flowing behind me is the Levitt Branch, and the Levitt Branch is going to flow over Indian Ladder Falls, down through Skytop, and to my right is the Buck Hill Creek, and the Buck Hill Creek is going to fall over Buck Hill Falls and down the escarpment. And in the village of Canadensis, these three creeks are going to meet to form the Broadhead Watershed. One of my favorite things about going to these vistas to look out over the Broadhead Creek is that we can see it as it may have appeared a very long time ago. You do not see everything that's going on in the watershed. It looks like almost an unbroken canopy of forest. And that's really important for our water resources because a forest acts like a sponge. A forest is an incredible ecosystem that has a great ability to absorb water. And when water falls, rain, snow melts, 3/4 of that water is going to seep into the ground. And as it seeps down into the ground, as it infiltrates, it's going to make its way through the ground, and eventually it's going to get into our streams. Our streams then here in the Poconos are some of the finest freshwater ecosystems on the planet, bar none. We are unbelievably fortunate to live where we live. 60%, 65% of all the flow in a stream is water that's coming back out of the ground. That's why they make such excellent swimming holes. I spent, on a day like this when I was a kid, I spent my time in the Mill Creek. I spent my time in the Broadhead Creek. And this water is unbelievably clear, clean, and cold. It is also one of the premier locations in the nation to go fly fishing. American fly fishing was born in the Poconos. Some of the old inns like the Henryville House had historic figures stay at them. And why were they there? They were there because of our water resources. We still have this. We still have naturally reproducing populations of brook trout, your state fish, 70% of the streams in Pennsylvania can no longer claim that. So we have this incredible resource base here. But we also live and work and play here in the Poconos. And in order to create suitable living places for us, we create a lot of what are known as impervious surfaces now in this watershed. We build buildings, we build our own structures, we put down a lot of pavement, we have a lot of habitat, what I like to refer to now as habitat for cars. There's nothing wrong with doing this, but the issue becomes that we have now taken away all of the ability for these surfaces to absorb water. There is no longer any infiltration. So where we used to get 75% of the rainfall and the snow melt to seep into the ground, it can't do that on these surfaces. And here in Mountainhome, my hometown, a lot of these surfaces are very old. We did this a long time ago. 390 was paved in the 1930s. 191 was paved in the 1930s. And so there was not a lot of consideration for what the impacts of all these impervious surfaces have. These impervious surfaces, and for a long time, a very long time, our only concern was getting rid of this water. This was now excess water. We treated it like wastewater. We had to get the water, catch the rain falling off of our rooftop, get it into a gutter, put it onto an impervious surface or a parking lot, and then discharge it into some drain. So what we did was we increased the amount of runoff. Runoff is that amount of precipitation that does not infiltrate in the ground. It immediately goes to a stream or some surface body of water. And we also now increase the amount of pollution that was coming from those impervious surfaces. Again, this stuff couldn't sink into the ground, and most of it was curbed and then deposited right into some sort of catch basin or drain. And all of these drains discharge directly to a stream here in the Poconos. Again, they were made a long time ago. Today, we do have some regulations. Our understanding of this has gotten much better. And so we do have a few regulations on the books for stormwater management that say we have to not only consider the increased volume of water we're dumping into our stream channels, but we also have to consider what that pollutant loading may be that's going into those stream channels. And it's one thing to do that on new development sites. You can see that if you go to the CVS in Mountainhome, right? CVS, their overflow parking is porous a pavement that actually has greater spaces in it so that water can infiltrate. They also have a detention basin that's designed not just to hold the water, but to infiltrate that water back into the ground so that they can minimize the impacts of the impervious surface they put down. But Lewis's, the Dollar General, that little lot, and Mountainhome candle shop and all of that stuff, those parking lots were built a long time ago, and so were most of our homes. We did not consider this back then. So there are retrofits that we can put in place in our own homes that can help to mitigate that problem. And one way to do that is by installing a rain barrel. Rain barrels now catch that rooftop runoff, and instead of just ditching it into your driveway so that it runs down to the culvert along the edge of your lane in your development or in your community, you now capture that rooftop runoff and it doesn't become a part of that increased volume. So we reduce the amount of volume we're discharging from our properties, and we also then cut down on some of the pollutant loading that's going into those streams. And now we have this water available for us to use on our properties. I think one of the really interesting things is this is nothing new. Our grandparents and great-grandparents did this all the time. It was called a cistern. You always captured your rooftop runoff. But as we've gotten better at developing and creating water systems and all that stuff, water was really available. One other really interesting thing about this is that here in the Poconos, we do live in what's referred to as a very water-rich environment. It is something that we absolutely take for granted. But if you move to other parts of the country, if you move out west, in Denver, in the city of Denver, it is illegal to own a rain barrel. It is illegal to capture that rooftop runoff for use on your property because of the water rights legislation that they have in states like Colorado, Utah, Arizona, New Mexico. That water is not yours. Even though it fell from the sky on the roof of your house, that water is not yours. And so we have an opportunity here to take advantage of this resource. If you do want to build a rain barrel, I wanted to show this image on the right because you get to see that you can do this with any kind of barrel. This one is obviously a trash can that they got at the hardware store. There are some things you're going to need to build your rain barrel. The illustration on the left shows all the components that you're going to need to build your rain barrel. You're going to need some sort of a spigot. You're going to need some sort of an overflow. You're going to need then some equipment to do that. You're going to need an electric drill and a paddle bit. I've got a paddle bit here if you're not sure what that is. Paddle bit, yeah, I've got it over on the other table, but I'll show them at the end real quick when we get out of this. I don't know if everybody can see me, but there's a paddle bit right there. It's one of these. It's got to be a 1-inch paddle bit that will be able to fit the spigot or tap, whatever design tap you want to use. And it has to have an overflow. You also are going to need some silicone caulk to seal everything once you've put it in. And you're going to need some plumber's tape to make sure that you don't get leakage right around the spigot itself. And then you're going to need window screening. The window screening is really important. That goes over the hole that you made in the top of the barrel so that water can get in. But that mesh of that screening you put on the top, that's not just there to capture leaves and twigs. It's there to keep mosquitoes out. You want a mesh that's got a gauge that's small enough that mosquitoes can't get through it. Now, if the barrel is completely full of water, it's not going to be a mosquito breeder. The water is just too deep. But if you've used all the water and you get below the depth of the spigot, and you have maybe 1 or 2 inches of water down there, that is enough water for mosquitoes to breed in. And so you don't want to have that happen. Most of the mosquitoes that bother you when you're trying to have a cookout with your family, they're not coming from the swamp down the road. They're coming from your backyard. You've got a mosquito breeder. If you've got tires behind the garage, if you've got a bird bath you don't clean out, if water can stand about 1 inch to 2 inches deep for over 7 days, you're breeding those mosquitoes right in your own backyard. I'm not going to go through an actual physical demonstration of how you can make your own rain barrel, but I do have a couple of websites listed over here on the left. The top one is not a video, it's just a step-by-step, a complete list of all the materials you're going to need, and then a step-by-step with photographs of how to go through it. It's from a website called Instructables. It's very good. The other one below it is excellent. This is the one I was talking about earlier from Clemson University. It's called Carolina Clear. They go through all the reasons for having a rain barrel like I did. And then after that, they actually have a very short video tutorial of how to make your very own rain barrel. So if you want to do it, including the barrel and all the other equipment you're going to need, you could probably do it for under $50 if you want to go ahead and build it yourself. If you don't want to go through the trouble of building your own rain barrel, they are also available for purchase online. I haven't seen any that were cheaper than, say, $55, $60, but they run the gamut. They can go all the way up. You could get a barrel from from Jack Daniel's distillery and turn it into a rain barrel, and it'll cost you $150 or something like that. But there are a lot of options available out there for not only buying rain barrels, but building one yourself. So you've got a rain barrel, it's ready to go, but you don't just want to put an old plastic barrel out in your yard and say it's a rain barrel. You want to make it a piece of folk art that you can have in your own backyard. This is the rain barrel that I did for the greening Mountainhome project. Some people were like, that doesn't look like the Poconos. Well, you know, we're all connected, and the water that leaves my property is going to go into the Broadhead Creek eventually and out to the Delaware River and the Atlantic Ocean. And hopefully it gets down to Florida somewhere and it becomes part of a coral reef. So we are all connected down there. I did want to spend some time on this because a lot of people said they wanted to know, how can I paint my rain barrel and make sure that it's still going to be on there a year from now? And the key to any kind of project like this is always preparation. Anyone who's tried to paint a room in their house or paint, right? If you take the time to prep everything first, the painting itself goes really, really quickly. And the first thing you want to do is make sure that the paint you put on there is going to stay on there. And so what you have to do with your barrel after cleaning it, check your barrel out very carefully when you get it. Even though it may already be complete with all the equipment that it needs, it may have come from a location that was that had stickers. So there might be some old adhesive, or it might have come someplace where it got a little bit of oil or something on it. So clean it first. Once you've cleaned it, you have to buff it. You have to do something to the surface to help the primer adhere. And so my neighbor does automotive work, and they do, as you know, a lot of automotive products now come with plastic parts on the exterior. And so that was really hard for people that have their own body shops and stuff like that, was how to get this paint to adhere to these plastic surfaces. And so they recommend the first thing to do is a scour. You can use a synthetic pad. Me and my friend, my neighbor, Todd, we did all of the priming for the rain barrels for the Greening Mountainhome project. And we did all of this scouring by hand. We scrubbed all of these rain barrels by hand. After you've scrubbed them down and buffed them, just wipe them with a dry cloth. Just wipe any residue that might be on there off with a dry cloth. And then you want to use a primer. The primer that you use has to be exterior grade, and it has to be recommended for plastics. If I hold this up, do you see it? Do you see me if I go like that? So in the little box, you know, says right on there, recommended for plastics. If it says that it's good for exterior wood and metal finishes, don't buy it. It needs to say that it's good for plastic surfaces. I also recommend that at this stage, you put 2 coats of primer on there. Now, I'm not a shill for Rust-Oleum or any other corporate entity, but Rust-Oleum, Krylon, any of these companies, they've been doing this for a long time. They've been making products for exterior use for a long time, and they now have very good products, again, that are made for plastic surfaces. The reason that we prime them twice is because you want to make sure that you get all that plastic surface covered before you put any of your finish paint on it. So it doesn't hurt to do it twice. You're going to have plenty of it in one of these, you know, one of these cans of spray primer. You could probably do 3 rain barrels with 1 can, giving them both 2 coats. So if you've just got 1 rain barrel you're working on, you will very easily get 2 coats out of 1 can of primer. Once you've done that, use an exterior grade paint. Again, don't just take the acrylics from your acrylic set that you might use for canvas work or any work that's going to be designed to hang indoors. Needs to be an outdoor paint. And after you've got it finished, then you're going to want to clear coat it. Again, oops, there you go. Cover it with clear coat. The reason for covering it with the clear coat is that the most damage that's going to occur to the finish you've put on your rain barrel is sunlight, UV radiation. Many of the clear coats that they make now, and again, it has to be exterior grade, they're designed to take the abuse of the sun. So they are going to be non-yellowing and UV protective. So you want to go out and make sure that you get a clear coat. And again, I would say do it twice. Okay, someone else has joined us. Oh, question.
So what if you already have a plastic rain barrel?
Sure. If you have a plastic rain barrel in use and you want to paint it, I would just recommend that you disconnect it. You don't want to paint it in place. So disconnect it, let it dry. Once it's dried, before you do the buffing, I would wash it good. So let it dry off. If there's any residual residue of anything that's been going on in your yard, make sure you wash all that off first before you buff it. And then you're not just buffing that stuff right into the plastic. So yeah, you can paint a rain barrel. If you can disconnect it, you can paint it, which is a perfect segue into what we're going to talk about now, and that's the installation. So you got your rain barrel, you got all the parts you need for the rain barrel, you've got your rain barrel painted, but now you need to install it. So these are the kind of things that you're going to need. Assuming you already have a downspout from your rain gutters and you know that that's where you want to put it, you're going to need to get something to cut the downspout with, a hacksaw. You're going to need an extra bend for your rain gutter, or they make these flexible rain gutters now. And they also make downspout diverters, which is just a section of downspout that you can put in that will divert part of the flow. So you don't have to completely disconnect the original downspout. Well, you do to get the diverter section in there. And then once you've done that, you're directing the flow of the water into the rain barrel. But before you do that, before you cut it, you want to put it on some sort of pedestal. The rain barrel that I brought in today, after this PowerPoint is over to show you guys, the spigot is only about 2 inches from the bottom of the rain barrel. Now, if you installed that on the ground, you'd have a hard time getting water out of that rain barrel. So you want to put it on some sort of a pedestal, level it, and then you want to cut your downspout. Don't cut your downspout until you know you've got the rain barrel exactly where you want it. This is an example of a rain barrel that has the diverter system rather than just a curved downspout that's going right into the rain gutter. This has the diverter in the rain gutter. And this is one of the rain barrels that was just installed here in Mountainhome. So it shows the flexible flow into from the downspout into the rain barrel. And it also now shows the overflow. So the overflow is really interesting because you can now use that overflow. You could put it into your garden if you have landscaping along the foundation of your house. You could just get one of those perforated hoses and just run it right out through your landscaping in your house. Or you could just run it to wherever the original discharge point was for that downspout. And here's some images of installing the rain barrels here in Mountainhome. So this was one of our intrepid installation teams, the brothers Dilger. But again, put it on the blocks, measure the downspout after you've got it on blocks or whatever kind of pedestal you're going to use. Then cut the downspout. Remember, measure twice, cut once. I always say that, but I always say measure twice and cut, well, whatever, right? Fool me once. Anyway, and And then you install the curved piece of downspout onto the rain barrel and you're ready to go. If you notice, the section of downspout that was cut off is laying next to the house there. It's important that you save the section of downspout that you removed to install the rain barrel. That's going to be really important when we talk about maintenance of this thing. So number one thing about maintenance is use the water. All right, now you're collecting the water. It's coming off your roof. You're collecting the water. Don't forget to use it. And you can use it in any number of ways. There's an unbelievable number of ways. Anything you use water for around the house except drinking. Don't drink it, right? But for anything you use water around the house. So you can take it out in a bucket and you can use it. You could use it to flush your toilet with. I mean, you could use it for everything. It's water, right? You can use it to wash with, and obviously you can use it to water the garden, right? And if you put your rain barrel high enough and the rain barrel is full, you're going to get enough hydrostatic pressure. There's going to be enough weight in that water that it's going to spray out of your hose like this. You're not going to need to have some sort of a pump to get it to spray. It's going to spray just from the sheer weight of the water and the pressure that it's putting on the hose to spray across your landscaping. But the big question is, what do you do in the wintertime? Well, in the wintertime, you need to disconnect the downspout from your rain barrel. And then you have to drain the rain barrel and turn it upside down. This was something that I learned by experience. Because if you just disconnect the rain barrel and you just let it stand there, then it fills up with water. So it's gonna fill up with water. And then you want to turn it upside down or even keep it in the shed. If you took the time to paint it, why subject it to all those winter conditions? Just put it in the garage, put it in the shed, bring it back next spring. And again, this is why it was very, very important that you keep the section of downspout that you cut off, because now it's available to go back onto the downspout. If you do that, you can do it with metal screws, or if you're not interested in doing that, and how do I reattach it? You can always use the handyman secret weapon. All of us up here at Possum Lodge know duct tape. So I really want to thank everyone on behalf of the Monroe County Conservation District and the Broadhead Watershed Association for joining us today. We're going to stick around and answer questions that have come in, but this is the end of the official PowerPoint. And also I want to remind everyone, as participants today, that you are going to get this survey. It's a Survey Monkey. You're going to get a link to this. You'll also get a link to the PowerPoint if you, for some reason, have any interest in watching this again. You can watch the PowerPoint again, and you will also get a link to the Survey Monkey. Like I said, it's only going to be about 10 questions, and it is a requirement of the grant that we offer you the opportunity to take that survey. I hope you have good things to say, at least about the presenter, if you go on to the survey. But again, if you want some more information, you can visit the Monroe County Conservation District's website, mcconservation.org. You can visit the Broadhead Watershed Association's website, broadheadwatershed.org. And if you want, again, I put these other two websites that I mentioned earlier. If you want good online instruction on how to build your own rain barrel, if you want to do it from scratch, the Instructables link is there, and so is the link to the Clemson University Carolina Clear YouTube video. Oh, another question right now? Yeah, was that somebody's rain barrel that they did? All right, excellent, cool. Well, let's go back and look at it again. Oops. There it is. That is unbelievably beautiful. That is incredible work. And you should be justly proud of that. I'm proud of it, just being a part of it. So yeah, this one is at the ESSA here in Mountainhome, the one on the right. And again, you can see how the maintenance people there left the other section, the original section of the downspout. So when it's time this fall for the ESSA to disconnect that rain barrel, they've got the downspout ready to go in place. How do they get their rain barrels? Following the workshop today, and ensuring that you attended, which you obviously did because you typed the question into the chat, you will be contacted by the Monroe County Conservation District, which was actually the entity that got the grant for the rain barrels. They will contact you with information on where to go to pick up your rain barrel. So I would assume that it's going to be the Kettle Creek Wildlife Sanctuary, Monroe County Conservation District building at the Kettle Creek Wildlife Sanctuary in Bartonsville. But you know what happens when you assume things. So
Monroe County's having their spring rain barrels.
Monroe County, I'm sure that they will in the spring have rain barrels available again. I would not, again, I would go out on a limb and say that because there were 56 people registered for this program, and they only had 20 or 25 rain barrels available, I would think that they might try to find a way to, nah, I better not go there. But if you're really interested, you attended this workshop, you contact the Conservation District and say, is there a way to get a rain barrel through the Conservation District?
Hey, Darryl.
Huh?
Hi, it's Edie.
Yeah, talking too much, huh?
No, I just want to let you know that it will be the Broadhead Watershed Association that contacts the people, the first 25 people who registered, and get a rain barrel if they attended today. And the rain barrels will be delivered to the Broadhead Creek Heritage Center. You will receive a voucher that says you're entitled to a rain barrel, and we'll let you know when the rain barrels will be there to be picked up.
Oh, all right. Thank you, Edie. So forget everything I said for the last 20 minutes. No, don't go back that far. Forget everything I said about where the rain barrels will be picked up. You'll pick them up at the BWA office.
And in addition, we are trying to get a few more rain barrels. And for those of you who registered and attended, or maybe just registered, and we will let you know if we can get any more that you could buy at our cost, which would be $75 to $80, all prepared. Not painted, but with all the fittings.
And when Edie says all the fittings, I'm going to get out of the PowerPoint. I'm going to end the shared right now. If you have questions about these websites, of course, any of them can be easily found on whatever search engine you prefer to use. So you can go online and look for them there. But we did have a question, and I'd like to address that question right now, that what actually comes with your rain barrel, because I discussed all of these things that you're going to need in order to make a rain barrel or install a rain barrel. But the rain barrel that you get, is really only going to come with the lid. Now, this rain barrel was not part of this project, but here's the screen for the opening on the lid. So it would, if you're getting a pre-manufactured rain barrel, it will come with the screening already on the lid. It's going to come with its overflow. Right? The overflow is going to be already put into the rain barrel, and it will have the spigot And that's it. It's not going to come with any hose to come off the overflow, and it's not going to come with a piece of downspout to direct the water into your rain barrel. It's just going to come with the spigot and the overflow. Some of them have multiple and smaller. Some of them will come with a drain that's even lower than the spigot, so that it's easier to drain in the fall when you're trying to store it for winter. But those are the basic components that every rain barrel, if it's pre-made, every rain barrel is going to come with those. It's going to come with those parts. So you're going to need to purchase a piece of downspout to direct the flow into the rain barrel. So that's the other stuff that really the other major thing that you're going to need to purchase. Of course, cutting your downspout. There are, so I did mention that I was going to show you, if you're interested in building your own rain barrel, this is what's referred to as a paddle bit for your drill. So it needs to be at least 1 inch, 1 1/8. And then for your overflow, they do make these, and depending on how large an overflow connector you want to put in, you can use one of those, or you can use a drill bit like this. This comes with many different sizes. It's got a serrated edge. This one's adjustable. So if you want to put one in the size that I had, you got to get a drill bit like this. Of course, for cutting your downspout, you're going to need a hacksaw. And if you want to, so we used just plain scouring pads. Actually, the back of a kitchen sponge, that's enough. I mean, you can see that there's some imperfections in the barrel. You would think that this is not going to do enough, but this is actually the same kind of material that we used, that my friend, the automotive painter, got from the supplier that gave us the primer. This was the kind of pad that we had to use. You could use something like this. You got to put in some really good elbow grease. You can use an attachment like this for your drill, but you don't want to really scuff it too hard, right? But this one's fairly soft. If you want to do it with your power drill, you just, right? And then wipe it all down. Again, when it comes time to paint it, you want to get a primer. So this one's a primer that's 2-in-1, bonds to plastic. See that? Make sure that it says bonds to plastic. This is a Rust-Oleum product. So this is paint and primer in one. You can just get the primer. The primers, the thing about paint and primer in one is that you're going to get some of the background color that your finished product is going to be. Prior to painting, most of the primers are just like automotive gray primer. This was the paint then that I covered mine with. Woo! This is so crazy. But again, yep, you're going to do 2 coats with your primer. And then this is your, so just to prove that I'm not a shill for Rust-Oleum Corporation, so this one's Krylon, but you can see Color Max clear, 4 plastic, right? Non-yellowing. This stuff, I keep going the wrong way. There you go. This stuff is made, and I like it to have the high gloss sheen. You can get the clear in matte as well. It doesn't have to be high sheen. And remember that it's gonna take a lot of beating from the sun. So you want to put a finish coat on it, because if you don't, your paint will start to fade. You know, it's just going to get bleached by the sun. So you want to put a finish coat on it. And then, so what I did for the rain barrel I painted, so here's my palette. You know, it's just the back of an old clipboard. But all I did was buy the primary colors. So I did a coral reef. It's got all kinds of oranges and purples and pinks and greens and all kinds of stuff, but I bought the 3 primary colors and mixed them, and it made a perfect rain barrel. Another question? Bring it over to my house and I'll be happy to paint your barrel. Because I'm just a slug. You could probably tell by my physique when I got up to demonstrate that. Oh, rain barrel. Yeah, just so you know, the Conservation District and partners had several of these projects in the past. And if you want to see what the condition of a rain barrel is after several years, I know that if you go up to Mount Pocono, there were a bunch of rain barrels in Mount Pocono, one at the municipal building. There's a rain barrel at the bank right next to the casino theater. I'm not sure what the name of the bank is. It's the one with all the nice wood siding and stuff. But there's a rain barrel. Those rain barrels were installed at least 8 years ago, 8 or 9 years ago. And they look, I mean, they look like they were painted yesterday. So, and this was the process we used to paint them. So, again, don't use the acrylics that you have for painting on canvas and stuff. Go out and buy stuff that was made specifically for exterior use. Oh, I bought the primary colors and black and white too. So five cans of Rust-Oleum and 1 can of spray primer and 1 can of clear coat. And the other great thing about these products is they're designed to dry very quickly, right? Remember the old Rust-Oleum commercials with Johnny Bench? Yeah, everybody doesn't even remember Johnny Bench. I just thought it was great because he spray painted a bench and then he sat on it and it was Johnny Bench. Oh, wow.
Show your age.
Showing my age. The Big Red Machine, the Cincinnati Reds in the 1970s. Yes. Okay, so we had a question that come in that said, do you use stencils or do you draw it by hand? Either way, I'm fairly certain that one of the barrels at the municipal building in Mountainhome has the Rotary logo and stuff. I'm fairly certain that well, I don't want to speak for
Yes.
them. They probably used some sort of a stencil or something like that. I do know some folks that used stencils in the past and then didn't do any brush painting at all. They just used spray paint because they built stencils specifically to put on the rain barrel so that when they pulled the stencil off, they only got paint where they wanted it. I paint mine freehand. Once you've got the primer on there, you can draw on it all you want as long as you're going to paint over that drawing. But I don't do that. I just paint this. Okay, here's my process. I paint the barrel and then I use white. So the one that I did is a coral reef. It's got a green turtle and an octopus and a nautilus. And so what I do is I painted the whole barrel and then I was like, well, there's going to be a sea turtle here. So I just painted where the sea turtle was going to be. I never drew it. But I painted it with like a white background, a surface that I then wanted to paint the finished turtle on. So I didn't draw the turtle. I just painted like an outline in white. And then I go back over that because that tells me then in my mind, that's where it's going to be and that's what it's going to look like. So I do the outlines of everything that way, but I did all of the corals and everything first. And then I put the other critters, clownfish and sea anemones and stuff like that. I put all of that on top of that background ocean and coral and stuff. And like I said, I always paint it white first because then I know that's where it's going to be. I think everyone We can unmute. Should I unmute everyone? Oh, yeah, that's right. Everybody's been unmuting themselves. If you really have a question that you want answered, if you have any questions about other ways to get involved in minimizing the impacts of runoff from your own property. I mean, the best thing that we can do as we live our lives is try to just minimize the impacts that we have by trying to mimic that hydrologic regime. So if we can get the water that falls on our property back into the ground, so rain barrels are a great way to do that. If you have those gutters, like community ditches along the road, the drive, if you have a shared driveway and there's a ditch along it, let that remain vegetated. I'm not saying that you have to let trees and stuff grow up in it, but what I'm saying is if you keep that as grass lined swale rather than digging it out every year, you're certainly going to minimize the amount of sediment that's going to flow off of there and get into nearby streams or swamps or ponds or lakes. Rain gardens, just depressions in your property that you let the water flow to. You're creating your own little mini floodplain there, an area. So the vegetation that you plant there is stuff that doesn't mind having its feet wet for a while. Now you're not going to create a wetland there. It's not a wetland, it's a floodplain. And so the water will flow into there. So there's great plants for stuff like that, like swamp milkweed and cardinal flower, buttonbush. So there's all kinds of, some of the dogwoods, silky dogwood. You get some shrubs just in a small depression on your property, and then the water will flow in there and it'll seep into the ground.